Inshallah and Ashe. Blessings to you, my energetic beings. And as always, welcome back to Musing with Tonya D podcast. I am your host. My name is Tonya D. I'm a practicing holistic shaman, medium, an otherworldly life coach, and a subtle energetic surgeon, a reflector by human design. And yes, I've known I'm a reflector for quite some time, since before I actually started my podcast. Either way, my intention truly is to utilize the power of indigenous technologies, wisdom, ancient wisdom of our bones down to our original divine blueprint to really navigate through our soul's harmonic, the realm of the elementals, the elemental highway, into and through the imaginal realm, the shaman's portal. And welcome to the season of that, by the way, Scorpio. Really reintroducing you to the magical being that I truly believe heartfelt resides within each and every one of us. This energy blueprint is unique and individual, and I would call it our divine blueprint, really, to really raise our frequency to our prime directive, your inner genius. I do call myself a holistic shaman medium, which is just a choreography of each and everything. And welcome to my podcast, Medicine Room. And I do go live on YouTube at Tonya D for a daily, weekly snippet, if that makes sense. I used to go live daily, but now I'm on the weekly. I generally talk about the element of the week. I believe that's our foundation. I do a moon or two meditations about the moon as a reflector and ritual. I've now added a ritual to my medicine room episode for meditations. I share the element of the day that generally comes from the 4 pillars, but also the Dagara cosmology and technology. I believe the elemental realm is part of our foundation. That's why I created the Rising of the Origins, and that's a gateway into the realm of our own personal elemental highway. Now, a lot of curious minds are wondering why that's so very important. Just even a small understanding of your elemental foundation, that's when you can really utilize the elementals for healing, manifesting, and so much more. And when your elemental foundation is balanced and in alignment with your gift and just living your purpose, your prime directive, that's where everything starts choreographing a new energetic frequency for us and through us. And it really activates the spirit that resides within each and every one of us. We got to bring spirit into the body to be embodied. Our spirit needs to be physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and so much more merged with our body, climbing into our skin. But I also share insights with the subtle energies, the bodies, the fields, insights, and a lot more. Being a seer to the unseen as a reflector and also in the Dagara cosmology. But I do hope that your heart is shining bright and everlasting and really inspired and just loving the season of the witches. This week's audio room artist is an intuitive channel with extrasensory energy healing. She's been providing clients with professional tarot, mediumship, oracular, and even shamanic services for a little over a decade. She's also a singer-songwriter, artist, and poet. Raya Elyse lives in northern Alberta, Canada, with her partner, son, and their rescue dog. And we all know how we need to rescue our fur babies. So with all of that, let's give a warm welcome to Raya Elyse to my podcast audio medicine room.
Hi.
Hi, how are you doing this morning, Raya? You got your pulsato going. Our audio listeners can't see that, but I'm sure they can sense it.
I'm well. How are you?
Doing great on this November rainy day.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So let's dive in. Give us a little insight into your journey.
Sure. I'm a 42-year-old mother, and I'm an artist and a singer-songwriter. And my journey has been through a lot of different mystical experiences and a lot of different traumas. I'm an ET experiencer and a walk-in. I was activated to light language in 2012. So I've been studying energy medicine and shamanism and tarot and all those fun things for about 20 years now. But I've been a tarot reader professionally for 10 years, on and off with energy medicine, but lately it's been more of a focus.
So, did you first start out with tarot reading? It sounds like playing with tarot cards, kind of.
Oh, I was a psychic kid, so I started out with everything. I read the entire metaphysical section of the Edmonton Public Library in my early 20s, but before that, I had a variety of interests, all of the things. Crystals. I was channeling and writing music from an early age. So it's hard to say what I started out with because it's kind of like a whirlwind of all the things.
So, your interests are like kind of reminds me of myself, like in Finding Nemo Dory, like squirrel, squirrel, like you want to touch it all.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Very multidimensional and multifaceted. Just following the bliss of what catches my attention in the moment. And that's a lot of things. Yeah.
So, as an intuitive channel in energy medicine, do you find that you work with all of the energetic centers simultaneously, or is there one that you're more drawn to, like a key player or a key role?
It takes a lot for me to ground, of course. So, eight chakra dominant, but I'll weave through my heart into the 10th and then up into the ninth, and then do a smaller circle from my heart to my first chakra and then to my crown, and then do smaller circles there. So it's kind of a full body deal, but primarily through my heart in terms of where I get my information from. Is that's the multidimensional translator and a different operating system than the brain.
So, when you say light language, did that just kind of happen for you, or had you always done it?
I have memories as a 3-year-old singing in a different language. But I was activated into light language when I was managing a crystal store. And as you can imagine, the energies of the crystal store got really chaotic. So I would cleanse the crystals and the space very, very frequently because the crystals are amplifiers. So I do that by different means. We couldn't use a lot of smudge smoke due to, fire regulations and whatnot. So I used a lot of sound and I'd tone with different bowls and sing to the crystals, but I'd ask each crystal what they needed differently because different crystals have different requirements. And there was one time I picked up a Lemurian seed quartz crystal and I asked, how would you like to be cleansed? And then through my toning, I started, and I was like, whoa, what is that? And then I heard it's a Lemurian light activation. So I kind of kept that to myself for the next, I don't know, I think about 5 to 7 years. Mentioning it a little bit, of course, at the mystical college I went to the Northern Star College of Mystical Studies, where there's a great community there. But yeah, it kind of happened spontaneously and was very strange. And there wasn't a lot of people doing light language at that time. So yeah.
Well, and I find too, I mean, when I came back from my near death experience, I was talking about Buddhism. I grew up in a small town. There was like, where was I channeling Buddhism from? There was, I mean, it was like Mayberry, Barney Fife. And I also was changing people's names into light language, angelic words. And when people are unfamiliar with something, it tends to scare them energetically because they don't understand it. So for myself, I felt like I was very alone in communicating telepathically using different voices from the other world, is how I would say that. Even in the Dagara cosmology, I recently, this morning, matter of fact, I just re listened to my first divination, cowrie shell divination with Malidoma. And he always calls me his contombly daughter, and how I spend more time in the other world than this world, trying to bring that energy back in here with all the adversity. But yeah, I think it's a language that, even like in the fifth element, when she was speaking, merging a bunch of languages, I feel like, just a tangent here, like there's all these languages, and when you push them all together, they become the angelic language, or the language of other star seeds in a way. That's kind of how I sense that. What do you feel?
I just want to say, yeah, I could totally relate to feeling different and weird and isolating with the kind of extreme mystical experiences and activations. But yeah, light language it seems like it's nonlinear, so it invites us into multidimensional thinking. It speaks to, I feel like it's really understood by all life in terms of how the elements and how nature and how birds and how my dog and children respond to me with light language, tuning into what it is. And I get visuals and also like images while I'm singing light language. So light language is comprised of light and sound and cosmic information and sacred geometries, because I'll see the different geometries moving or the different sigils, the different swirls. I'll see the DNA helix go up. So it activates certain genetic potentials. It can also turn off non-beneficial genetic potentials, like the epigenetics that may give us a predisposition towards something that we're not interested in embodying. So it's activator. It will change our resonant field. It changes our frequency. And as it changes our frequency, it allows us the access to different potentiality.
I feel like it also raises our vibration to like our original cell, getting off all the toxicity or the darkness or whatever you want to call it that feels like it's weighing upon us. It helps release that. It's almost like it feels like to me like you're like popping it all out, every little particle wave of the physical body, and then it like comes back in and reshapes.
Yeah, it provides a different template. Sometimes when I look at it, it looks like a clear set of instructions or a map or a blueprint. Sometimes you can liken it to a recipe. It gives you the set of instructions towards certain outcomes. So your intentions for singing the light language, what you're wanting to tune into, what you're wanting, even if it's an open-ended question like, what do I need most right now? There are plenty of all the different galactic races. They have all worked on certain themes, so they have certain levels of mastery. For instance, Cassiopeia has mastery in love, and because they worked on that emotional spectrum. So as humans, we are hybrid beings that have pulled genetics from a multitude of star races. But with those genetics comes the emotional spectrum with the themes they worked in. And we're also working, when we're working multidimensionally, it can be across timelines. So these could be future aspects also when the resolution of the certain themes have been achieved. So say we want to resolve something in our issues with understanding or receiving or welcoming or feeling worthy to love, the Cassiopeians could very well come through and provide some set of instructions that will just invite a tweaking of our energy field. Just, you know what I mean? It's just kind of like these little light taps that invite us to either embody it or not. And, it's all an invitation, and it's held timelessly in our field once we've heard it or seen it or been activated to it. So we could get a package of that information and then sit on it for a week, a month, a year, and then all of a sudden like we access it too. So it's a very broad spectrum modality that I think is really important for the future, because we're awakening to our multidimensional selves, which is pretty much the requirements for survival for our next level of humanity, is to be able to access different solutions and innovations and different ways of thinking, which all come from different dimensional states. So to access those, we need to kind of open our minds and more importantly, work through our hearts to be able to understand and translate the universe, the galaxy, our collective, and how we work within them in a different way.
As far as like your guests, the people you work with, do you find that you actually attract the certain, I want to say kind of the same kind of story, like a residual, or do people have a variety of stories that they're working through?
Oh, I get a variety. Yeah, sometimes it's thematic depending on what I'm working on, because we tend to get, the holographic reflection of what we're working on. You know what I mean? So we can work it through other people as well. But there's a wide variety of themes for who I work with and what walk of life of them. I share some light language on videos on YouTube not on YouTube, on Facebook. It's going to be on YouTube again in a little bit, but on Facebook, I've shared some light language videos, and it's really, really fun. My favorite part of sharing is that I'll get videos or recordings or sound clips from people all over the world who haven't shared their light language with anyone, who are sharing it with me because they, and I feel so honored and privileged to get to hear them for the first time. Or, there's a few people who have said, I listened to your light language and then listen to what I'm doing now. And then they'll speak, and it's just this different conversation, and we'll kind of go back and forth with that. So it's really fun. It's like a jam session, pulling in different frequencies. it's really, really playful. Since it speaks to the emotional body and not the intellect, we have to understand it with the emotional body. So it allows us to work through some emotions that we may not have language for too. But yeah, in terms of certain themes, like I think this, as I was saying earlier, this is broad spectrum application for this type of medicine. And I do find I'm always heartened when like different people from all walks of life, come to me and enjoy it for different reasons. Sometimes they'll come to me without, just for energy medicine or just for tarot or, mediumship or all the other things that I do. And then I'll explain to them what light language is. And sometimes they'll nod, like they'll say they understand, but then when I'll start speaking, then they'll be like, what is that? And so I'll have to explain again. But it was really funny this one time, or a couple times actually, people had been like, are you speaking Japanese? Yeah.
Or in tongues, right? I used to get that. When that happened for me, I was little and I just thought everybody could see and talk like I was, when you're a little kid, but apparently not. I love that.
Yeah.
Like, I think we should have like a light language coven where we all speak in our language, and it's so giddy.
Oh yeah, it's really fun. And a friend of mine is a Catholic school teacher actually, and he speaks in tongues. And we both set our belief systems aside and we'll both talk to each other because that's how he prays. And honestly, like I feel it's the same thing by different names, and it's really, really interesting that we have this commonality from like such diverse belief systems or maybe, ways of viewing the world, but we open up to the both of us not necessarily knowing and then meeting in the middle and being able to communicate like that together in reverence for, source, a higher power.
Absolutely. So, would you mind sharing some light language with my listeners today?
Sure. I'm going to just tune into everybody and ask for what everybody might need the most at this time. Feels like everybody needs some soothing, some really deep nurturing. Koya samoni shotso roto koyo sotso. Hietsarekie shotsaya satsaya samana. Hoya monoyo shotso roto koto to 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 to. Rivia shatsara takata yeshietsa. Homona yeshietsia tsaroto koyo shotso. Firietera takiemie shotsoyo. Kuye sanaya shotsaya tata. Kunaya shanayo sunayo sunaye. Shanaye, 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 Kunaya Shanaya, Kunashaya Sanano, Shusoyo, Sunayo, Junayo, Si,
Oh, beautiful. I love that. Gave me chills. So, can
Thanks.
you dive into the shamanic services that you offer your guests and your audience, your listeners?
Sure. I have a lot of fun with the shamanic journey. So I can either journey on behalf of people. I've journeyed to assist with psychopomp work, helping to death doula, helping people pass over, helping their loved ones pass over. I've helped with soul retrieval, with going back and escorting people through the shamanic journey to integrate and process and to become their own guardian angel through traumatic times, or to find the solutions for certain things on different wavelengths. Some of my favorites is to help to create a beautiful place in the other worlds, in the non-ordinary reality, where people can have a meeting place where they meet up with their guides to either receive healing, to receive guidance, to have a council of friends that they can access and go back to. Because I feel we didn't come here unequipped. We came to this realm with the ability to access other realms and to pull information from all the different realms. We came with a large circle of friends, as a collective have forgotten our access to that. So oftentimes there are plenty of different guides, that are ready, willing, and able to work with us on all levels and all layers, on nothing too small, like anything of the human experience, because this is a master level classroom. So it is very difficult. It's a lot. So we weren't meant to go this alone. Cooperators are standing by.
Well, I find people sometimes, we've been conditioned and we need to like wash off this conditioning that we all have a gift and a purpose and to call in the beings in the unseen, whether it's an ancestor or a wedame, a candomblé, a genie, a light being. Like we have got a variety of opportunities of gatekeepers and guardians. The fae, I tend to go with the fae more than not, all kinds. And I think I'm not sure where we cut off that connection, but I feel like there's a lot of awakening that's happening and a lot of opportunity to really connect with our higher self, our Sira, what we look like on the other side, to really bring in that energy and be a conduit for our own personal, like why we came here individually as and collectively as we go through this transition.
Oh, yes, totally. I work with the Fae a lot too. I really love them. They're really playful. They bring great humor. They help us to lighten up and to laugh at things, which, levity is such good medicine. Not to mention, like, since we're in this time of shifting and great awakening and great change, we're in a sector of space that's high in photonic light, and that light is activating us, along with the solar rays and the changing Schumann resonances. Like, we're being, like, bombarded from all fronts to change and to awaken and almost, like, nudged to blossom if we were all flowers, right? We're being nudged to open and to blossom, and this is activating certain genetic potentials in our reservoir of genetics that we can pull from. And from some of the ancestor work I've done personally, I would go often into my hall of ancestors in non-ordinary reality to consult there and to see who's there. And I found fae beings in my genetic ancestry. So that was really interesting, and tuning into that. When there was a time when we worked and there's no barrier. We were on a similar dimensional location with the Fae beings. And I feel like in some ways the movie, like The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, like that kind of pulls into, like they kind of show with the orcs, it's like industrialization, and like when we moved out of our villages into cities, and you know what I mean? It shows the whole story if we look at it from a different perspective there. The colonization of Europe brought in huge trauma, and it pushed a member of our family, which I feel the Fae are part of our extended family, into other realms, and it cut off different aspects of ourselves. So as we find, ourselves in high weirdness, experiencing different things, and we kind of investigate that thing, we might find even weirder reasons for those occurrences, such as the activations of Fae genetics within our bloodlines, because those of us hybridized with Fae genetics are meant to be the bridge between realms, just like those of us with, all of us have, because we're a star-seeded race, but those of us with, maybe more star-seed genetics or galactic genetics are meant to be the bridge between there, or even it could be, say, angelic also. So as we're meant to bridge between these realms, the invitation now is to reawaken our relationship with all life and come into right relationship with all life, to come into clean relating and self-responsibility, and perhaps even, dare I say, learn to become the stewards of our earth, where we are caretaking, ourselves and each other and her, Gaia. So yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff going on. Some of the earlier light languages I spoke was really, really Fae, and it was very, very strange, but it was really fun too. And there are some Fae races that are also galactic races, so there's blending there. You know what I mean? There's so much variance and variety. There's such a beautiful palette of different colors for our painting that we're creating here together. So our learning and growing and healing, we kind of like become aware of different, different things that were at play the whole time, within us.
Absolutely. I love that. And yeah, I totally sense the dimensionalities and the Hobbit or the Lord of the Rings, it's the same thing. And I'm always curious how we cut the barrier there. I have a book that I love, Elfland. That was like one of them, and then it grew into another one. And it was like we closed the portal off to this magic and this medicine that exists, which I do believe is opening us up. And children, I think it's really important right now to keep the portal open for these new children being born into the world so they can really transform after I've left planet Earth and really bring it back to its origins.
Oh, yes, definitely. Definitely. In Shamanic Journeys in class, my teacher, Sky McLaughlin at Northern Star College of Mystical Studies, Irish, and a seventh daughter in her family, and did a lot of work with the Fae And so she had us meditate through the she spiral. So we meditated through that, and it opened like a doorway to me, and then I was in that realm, and then it was like everyone was like, oh hey Raya, you know what I mean, like happy to see me. But then I was like, they wouldn't know me, like, I felt like, and it was, I was being self-important or, bolstering myself in some ways. And it was like a record scratch where everyone like just stopped and looked at me and they're like, oh, she's been infected with the mind virus, So that whole journey was all about like clearing that filter through which I see reality, so I could see more clearly that, yeah, I am I have friends in the Fey realm, and part of the awakening in consciousness is awakening to where we've already had established consciousness. It's just becoming conscious of that level of consciousness. Yeah. Does that make sense?
The door open, the communication pathways.
Totally.
Absolutely. So is there anything else that your heart wants to journey towards and share with my listeners today?
I just want to thank everybody for listening. A hidden gem where I haven't had a website, or, I did work some psychic fairs and here and there, kind of a spattering, and then through word of mouth of, had some steady clients, which I'm really grateful for. But I feel like being on your podcast here, Tonya, thank you so much, is part of the entry to the bigger world where I'm going to be starting to work in a different way. And I'm excited and scared, of course, about how that's going to look. And that could be too why I don't have a great summary of what I do exactly, and that could use some work in terms of how I define myself, like going back to the beginning of the conversation there. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to working in a greater way. I've been called to offer, group healings, because there's so much we could do together. Because, there's the Bible quote, like, when two or more gather in my name, like, we become portals through which is easier to connect with the crystalline grid and to access these different things and to anchor it in a new way, because we all resonate, just like Tibetan monks meditating, we'll all start to ride the same wave, wave, yeah. And then through that, I think more of the miraculous can happen. And while before, with persecution and witch trials and this, that, like, that separated our covens, that separated our communities. But now with, this whole Neptune and Pisces thing, like the explosion of interest in the metaphysics and in, you know what I mean? Our kind of stuff has made safety in numbers where, you can have a random conversation with a neighbor in a really small town I live in and mention astrology. And she'll say to me, she was like, oh, my daughter is really interested in that. And you know what I mean? And in past lives. And it was I totally didn't expect it from a regular person on the street.
The Pisces and Neptune, what's curious there is the last time Pisces or Neptune was at the degree it is right now in Pisces was actually the Salem witch trials. We're at the other side of the coin this time. Instead of burning us at the stakes, we're actually being honored. And there's a lot of healing that's happening for those of us that lived through that timeline, that lifetime, and are actually revisiting planet Earth right now and using our medicine, our wizardry to really transform the world, bringing spirit into the earth plane more and reconnecting with that. I feel like that's a huge avenue as well. There was something else I wanted to say as you were talking, but the sound waves. So visions, I'm predominantly visions. My visions are usually very prophetic. But I had a situation like that's happening to really, when you talked about the waves of the earth, if people, humans, whatever, you could use light language, you could use drums, you could use sound bowls, but if across the entire globe at, say, 11 a.m., and mind you, 11 a.m. from where you're at, and like play for, say, an hour and a half, whatever, if everybody at 11 a.m. in your timeline where you're at on planet Earth started doing sound bowls, drumming, whatever, for an hour and a half, it literally will create a wave of sound across the entire globe to shift the energy, frequency, vibration simultaneously. Make sense?
Oh, yeah. That's so exciting. As we're in the sea of frequency, that frequency that has the most amplitude is the frequency that will entrain all other frequencies. So, you know what I mean? With the, these times they are so chaotic, but that chaos can easily be transformed or retuned, right? brought into tune and harmony and used to propel us towards what we do want to see in the world. What kind of human family we want to be. And like, that's such an exciting invitation. I love that so much. To go back to the Salem witch trial things, that is so cool. And I got shivers as you were speaking. For my own personal healing, I've had at least 70 different lifetimes of persecution through various forms of torture, including my first past life memory as a toddler. Seeing a knife, I shut my eye really tight because I remember like getting my right eye removed for being a seer, or even like I had a lot of hanging things and burning things when I smelled bacon, like it, somebody was cooking bacon. It brought me back to that, which is kind of a gross analogy. But the most recent one being the hanging and the rope and going up the tree that had the bar rungs put on it. So it was like this weird merging with the tree too. But I digress. The guys were saying like, you've done that already. You know what I mean? You've been there, you've done that. You don't need to repeat that loop. Now it's time to do it from a different octave where we're honing from the gifts of all those different lifetimes, bringing them into the now moment. You know what I mean? Bringing them into the 0 point where we draw from, where we can utilize that wisdom, and where people are at a different stage where they can see us for who we are, where they can recognize who walks with us, where they can recognize the type of, authority or understanding or genius that we may have garnered in other spectrums of, dimensionality that has a lot of applications to here. And that is unused medicine so far, not totally unused, but untapped. What is going to help us, as a collective to move forward?
Well, and I sense humanity fears what it doesn't understand instead of just saying, I don't understand, or that doesn't make sense to me, or if it makes them feel like they're uneducated or whatever, they tend to fear what they don't understand. And when fear is a false evidence affecting our reality anyway. I like to challenge my fears and really dive in and be like, okay, what is this? That's kind of what I tend to do. At the same time, holding integrity, right? Holding space. And like you said, those experiences, we've already had them. And sometimes they come into our field to kind of, sometimes for me, when that happens, it's like an awareness of somebody I'm going to do a session for. It gives me an awareness of what is happening for them. So I kind of know the prescription medicine ritual that I'm going to offer them as a way to get to the root cause of the condition and shelf it. It's already happened. You don't need to experience, just flick it back away. Something like that.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, totally. I love your prescriptions are like instructions that, for the blueprint, the recipes, just like the light language is a recipe. We're all bringing through different recipes that are providing people the framework through which they may work with reality in a different way. And awakening can be scary too. And that's, part of why I love light language, because it can't be understood with the intellect so much. There are wider definitions where this is a certain theme and whatnot. Although I have heard some people translate it really, really cool, but I don't think they're really set definitions like the words are here, where it is a more broad theme and where, different energies can braid it in. So like, I was simplifying it earlier by saying the Cassiopeians can bring us in love, but it can be like a blend of the Cassiopeians, the Fae, the stone language, the river language, the tree language, all coming in certain increments to provide that specific type of frequency that's going to invite us in. Since we can't understand it, it runs through our emotional body. It speaks to our hearts. And our hearts are where, as a multidimensional translators, the other operating system, where we can understand and work with reality in a different way through heart-centered presence, through being in the here and the now on Earth, plugged in, like these beautiful circuits, like these beautiful acupuncture points on Gaia, which is, bringing in our healing in a different way also. But the head, the intellect, what people think is clear thinking is not. That's where all the fear programs are. That's where all the distortions of reality, and that's not clarity on reality. Through our heart in sustained resonance, we can access the higher mind. And the higher mind, I'm like, what is that? And they're still kind of they don't tell me all the answers, of course. They just kind of give me breadcrumbs here and there, because part of the discovery of learning is the experience of it. I feel like the higher mind is kind of like this clear waveform, because so many people now, they think they're unaffected by their emotional state. But if they're not working with their nervous system in a healthy way, if they're not, and if they're in, fight or flight per se, rather than rest and digest, which is also akin to heart-centered consciousness, they're not necessarily rational. They are unable to be unbiased because that's the nature of duality, right? Where the ego, where the fear programs, where the intellect anchors us into 3D. And in order to see beyond 3D, we have to move different operating systems. And that's not to write one off, and that's not to utilize them in tandem. A lot of the times we flip between them, right? And that's not to say one's better than the other. It's just different tools for different levels of operating. So I hope that makes sense there. I went on a tangent. This has
No,
been a
it
fun
totally
conversation.
makes sense to me. I mean, it's so true. I'm always saying, okay, so which voice is this? Who's speaking to me and where you coming in here? And is this my message? Especially when you're channeling, because sometimes you might say something and people are like, or sometimes I'm even like, what in the front door is that all about? But it means nothing for me, but it's going to mean something to somebody else who I'm working with or who's listening to me.
Totally. I love that investigation where like you stop and you have an awareness of, that voice, or even like an awareness of that behavior, and then you investigate it and then you track it, and then by tracking it, then we're like, oh, and that's where discoveries are made too. And, yeah, there are lots of times when I'll say things that are, especially in session with people, that don't make sense to me, but make sense to the people. I randomly in this one, I remember this tarot session, and earlier on, I'm doing it in the metaphysical store I worked at, and like randomly I'm pulling the cards. I'm like, I kept hearing the word potato, and my guides will repeat it until I say it. So I'm like, okay, potato, And then the woman, like, it's just like Niagara Falls, like starting to bawl, because like a potato garden is what she and her mother used to do, and her mother just passed, and that was like, you know what I mean? One word, one like random word helped her, feel her mom. How awesome and cool is that? Sometimes too, those things are unpacked in the moment, where like we'll give them a word or a key phrase or a recipe of some sort, a prescription, and then later on it'll all sort itself out, where, you know what I mean? I've had phone calls from clients that were like, oh, now I understand that. Or, you told me you saw a tattooed hands, and then immediately after our session I went onto Facebook and there's a picture of tattooed hands, because it shows, you know what I mean, the interworkings of the timelines. It shows the synchronicities and, the quantum reality.
Absolutely, 100%. Well, you've been a treasure today, Raya. This has been so fun, just soundboarding off of each other.
So
So
fun. Thank you so
great.
much.
So I
Oh,
will
yeah.
have Raya's info in the show notes. She will have a website soon. I have an offer for her. And as
Ooh.
always, if you enjoyed this, tag me on your Instagram stories at the Tonya D, or wherever on the highway you may find me and resonate. And with that, I will see you on the other side. Ashe, blessings. To connect with Raya and be a part of her light language, part of her magic, her medicine, what she brings into the world, her gift and purpose, I do have her link to her Facebook account in the show notes. And as soon as she does have her website up and ready, I will also share that. And if your heart is feeling called to donate to the Musing with Tonya D podcast, buy me a cup of coffee or whatever delight that like gives you the gift of gratitude and blessings. Be sure to tag on that link there as well in the show notes. So once again, thanks for tuning in. And as always, ashe, blessings. And I for sure will see you on the other side.